It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody! It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Schick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
And Les Webster.
Hello, all.
And once again, we are joined by our friend Eddie Medina.
Hello, everybody.
Yay!
I got a round of yays.
How are you doing, man?
Pretty good. I got yays and not booze, you know, which has happened before. It happened last year when Cole and I did the opening ceremonies for AllCon, and I made a Stan Lee joke that some people in the back of the audience didn't find too funny and started booing me. So that was a fun moment.
Aye.
I'm gonna have to ask what the joke was. You don't have to do it right now, but maybe you just let me know later. I would be interested in hearing the joke.
It's very brief. I can just throw it out there. Just
okay, alrighty.
And go.
Just the fact that, you know, Stan Lee has been dead for a few years now, but they just have his stuffed corpse just going, you know, making the circuit, you know, the con circuit to take photo ops with everybody. That's why he's always just sitting on the stool, not moving at all.
Ouch.
It's a weekend with Stan.
Right. Basically a weekend at Bernie's type thing. So like 80% of the people in the room just died laughing. The other 20% were just booing.
Well, you got 80% going.
Right,
Exactly.
that's pretty good. That's
Hey.
pretty good numbers right there. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
actually real good numbers.
I thought because it was AllCon, and I would just get 100% because usually everyone's down for whatever at AllCon. But anyways, it's good to have yays instead of booze.
Well, you deserve them.
Kiss up. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy, guys?
Oh, well, I am finally getting caught up. I don't know, I could almost say complained about this a little bit, about catching up on Knights of the Dinner Table, kind of the gaming comic / magazine. And one of the ones I read recently, one of their usual features is they have like a list of like reference links, and they have some theme that they talk about. And in one of those issues, like I think it was like 2 issues back, the theme was actually like minions and lackeys, but the final link, which is usually the fun one in my opinion, was a link to a website which has a list, which is the top 100 things I'd do if I ever became an evil overlord. And I will try to remember to put a link in the show notes, but some of these are just freaking hilarious.
Nice.
Like the first
I
one,
want to see it.
number 1, my legions of terror will have helmets with clear plexiglass visors, not face-concealing ones. Number 4 is shooting is not too good for my enemies. And what is probably my personal favorite is number 12. One of my advisors will be an average 5-year-old child. Any flaws in my plan that he is able to spot will be corrected before implementation.
There you go. There you go.
Like setting the timer on a VCR or something?
Yeah.
Absolutely. For recording the massacre of the heroes. Absolutely.
Very nice. Alrighty, Les.
I had kind of a 3 halves weekend. What I mean is I read half of the book We'll Save the Galaxy for Food by Yahtzee Croshaw. I have read about half of The Legion of Regrettable Supervillains, the sequel to the League of Regrettable Superheroes by John Morris. And a good friend of ours gave me a copy of The Monster of Phantom Lake, the musical, and I've been through about half of that. One of the claims on the DVD is winner, best local musical, and then in parentheses is third place. So,
Wow.
That's the Christopher Mitt movie, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And they had done a musical of it for stage last summer. Yeah, 2016. So it's amusing as can be. It's fun to watch.
He does some fun movies.
Does some of the most bizarre ones. This past weekend they showed Danny Johnson Saves the World.
Yeah, I missed that. I was going to try to go to that, and I missed it.
Yeah, if you can get a chance to go see him at your theater, please do, because he is a lot of fun. And
Definitely.
he keeps claiming he's going to try to do a movie around here sometime.
Yeah, that's the rumor. He does one movie a year. Has been for, was it 12 years now? 10, 12 years?
Yes, sir. Since 06.
Okay, yeah, 11 years, 12 years. Nice.
Cool.
How about you, Eddie?
Just keeping busy. I just finished up the art chores on Kingdom Comics Presents issue number 4 for Kingdom Comics. It's an anthology series, and I'm doing the Sir Caliburn story. So it's being written by Brian Bradley, the founder of Kingdom Comics, and I'm drawing it. This is the 3rd chapter I've drawn for it. So I just finished that. And as far as reading, I'm reading the Sgt Fury Volume 1 Essential book. And that's fun. Man, I love Sgt Fury and the Howling Commandos. So to get my hands on that book for a mere $10 at Half Price Books it made my day.
That's a coup right
Very
there.
nice. Yep.
Yep, that is a coup.
Mm-hmm.
Total victory.
Right. I was yelling Wahoo in the car all the way home.
Scaring your wife and other drivers, huh?
Right. Well, what was worse is I was alone in the car, so it was really just scaring the other drivers.
That's nice.
It's good stuff, though. I mean, I've never had a chance to read the first issue until I got that collection, so it was nice to finally read the first issue of that series.
It's a fun series.
Oh yeah, it's great stuff.
Not sure if I read any of that. I may have to see if I could find myself a copy.
And
who was writing those? Was it Maurice Severin doing the art?
No, it was John Severin doing the
John. Okay.
art later on, like the covers and interior way later on. But it started out Stan and Jack were doing it right off.
Okay. All right.
And it's great stuff. But of course, every time I mention my love for Sgt. Fury, inevitably someone comes back and says, "Well, you gotta check out Sergeant Rock." So I gotta at some point check out Sergeant Rock too. I guess Sgt. Fury's not good enough for them, so they want me to check out Sergeant Rock.
Which will bring on Our Fighting Forces and
Yes.
The Haunted Tank and Johnny Cloud and, good Lord, Gunner and Sarge.
No, I can get
the losers.
on a tank.
Just jump straight to Tank Girl and be done with it. I mean, come on.
Tank Girl.
Now, the losers was pretty good. What I've read was the stuff that Kirby was involved with. I've got a collection a few years back, but that's about the extent of it, and I enjoyed that.
Mm.
One of my favorites was the Captain Storm, the PT boat skipper.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that came out just about the same time PT 109 movie came out.
Which one was that? Was that the one with who? Who was in that one? That one's ringing a bell right now.
That is the guy that was in Charlie, Cliff Robertson.
Yeah,
Oh,
Cliff Robertson. Okay, yeah. Okay. I knew it was ringing a bell, but I was blanking.
yeah. Yeah, he was Uncle Ben, right?
Cool.
In the Tobey Maguire movies?
Yeah.
In the Tobey Maguire show?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, checking this out. An uncredited George Takei was in the film. God, it's been so long since I've watched this, man. I don't remember that. I'll have to go back and watch it.
I couldn't tell
Dun-dun-dun.
you anything about Takei being in it.
But he was probably in it for like a second.
Right.
We'll have to go back and watch it.
Some
He had a speaking part, otherwise he really wouldn't have listed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
random
Cool.
Japanese soldier. Right.
What was yours like, Thomas?
It was actually kind of a quiet week. Just catching up on reading, working on some plans. I kind of had an idea for a story that I'm in the very early stages of trying to write. My problem is I come up with the ideas, but it just seems like I cannot freaking write them, and I don't know what my deal is. So, but oh well.
It'll come to you.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't know what my deal. I guess someone needs to be kicking me in the ass saying you need to do it.
You need to do it. It's easy
Get
to.
your tickets.
Wow. It's easy to stall when you're trying to, get something out there, to writing or drawing for that matter. Sometimes you just have those moments where you just stall and I find just putting on old movie favorites, soundtracks, something else will just kind of maybe help kickstart the creative juices again.
Okay.
That's just me. Oddly enough, sometimes listening to podcasts will do it. Don't know why. I think it just helps me relax and not tense up so much when it comes to doing stuff like that.
Yeah, kind of a distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that could be it. That I'm just trying too hard. That I need to let it be a little bit more free flowing.
To quote the nurse from the Disorderly Orderly Jerry Lewis movie, try hard not to try so hard.
But that's pretty deep right there.
Did he say, "Hey, lady," right after that, or?
No,
Friday.
that was one of his movies where he didn't really do the "Hey, lady" bit, if at all. But yeah, I love the Disorderly Orderly. That and Who's Minding the Store is probably my favorite of the old Jerry Lewis movies.
Which was it that he played the multiple parts?
Oh, that was Family Jewels. That's another really good one. I really wish those would be on. They may be on DVD, but I've looked for them before on DVD and they're not available.
Wow.
Wish they were.
And his movies are not really played all that often. I mean, you may find.
Catch the Nutty Professor or something.
You'll see Nutty Professor every once in a while, and maybe the Bellhop.
Yeah.
But not much outside of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it used to be growing up, they would play them all the time on TV on the weekends, and yeah, not so much anymore.
Crazy. Before we get into this week's topics, I need to take a couple minutes to thank our sponsors for their support. First off, I want to say thank you to Peter Smetty and Make My Indie, the independent digital catalog. The spring catalog is out now. It's 114 pages of previews, reviews, interviews of print, digital, and web comics. If you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our sponsors tab, first thing you'll see is a link to where you can download the either a CBZ or the PDF file and check it out. There's some really good stuff there.
Lots of cool indie comics.
Yep. Stuff that they're not necessarily available through Diamond. This is going to be your best bet to check these books out. A lot of them are just available on the indie publisher's website, but this gives you a chance to let you know that, hey, they're there and what they're about and how to get your hands on them.
Mm-hmm.
So go check that out. I also want to thank Things from Another World for sponsoring the fellowship. Some of the deals that they're running right now: free domestic shipping on in-stock comics, books, and graphic novel orders of $35 or more, and that's good through April 30th. In addition to their evergreen specials of 40% off comics, statues, toys, and merchandise, 30% off select pre-order manga titles, 50% off Nick and Dent comics. So while you're on our sponsors page, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the information for Things from Another World. You can click on one of those images. It'll take you to their website and lets them know that we sent you their way, and take advantage of some of these awesome deals.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. We figured, since we would have Eddie on this week, let him choose what the topic was going to be, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw the microphone over to him.
Okay, I've caught the microphone and I'm going to use it. So,
yay! Good catch, by the way.
Right. So, in coming up with the topic, I needed to pick something that I didn't have to research, that I could just dive into because I know it by heart. And the two things I love the most are comics and toys. So I figured, why not talk about comics that spawned a successful toy line, or vice versa, toys that spawned a successful comic line, in either direction, And so, because that's always been my thing growing up, was getting into certain comics, and I'll throw out my choices here in a bit, but, that making that connection between comic books and then discovering there were toys coming out based on them, or going to Sears or Best and buying these toys and then realizing, oh, they're on the spinner rack at 7-Eleven, there's a comic based on these toys. So as a kid, that was always exciting. So that's kind of been always a thing for me, how one spawned the other type thing. So yeah, like I said,
and you keep using that word spawned as if maybe that's
one
of the choices on your list.
No, I didn't even think about that. But that's a perfect example of a comic that spawned a successful toy line. Wasn't even thinking that. But good one, Mike. I like that.
Your subconscious is at work there, I'm telling you.
Right.
Dun-dun-dun. Alrighty, who would like to go with their first choice?
I mean, I guess I can go, since
okay.
I wanted y'all to do this topic. I might as well get us going.
I mean, that's fine.
Well,
go ahead. Yeah.
Go for it.
The big one, the absolute biggest one for me, the one that just made me not just a comic book collector, but made me as a kid want to be a comic book creator. This is what got me just wholeheartedly into drawing, and not just before I would always just draw, the Peanuts or anything else out of the Sunday comics, but this comic just took it to a whole new level where I just felt the need to start drawing things a little bit more like comic book traditional, realistic, I guess. And that would be G.I. Joe. And my childhood was just revolved around G.I. Joe, and everything, the comics, the toys, the cartoons, it was like the full thing for me. Like that Star Wars and Indiana Jones was my obsessions as a kid. It was always one of those things that I was constantly reading or playing with the toys. And it was just one of those things where I remember buying the first issue. My brother and I were at Target, and this was back when, they would always polybag the 3 comics together for like a certain price, like 99 cents or whatever. It'd have like 3 different Marvel comics or 3 different DC comics. Well, G.I. Joe #1 being like a double-sized issue and it was a $1.50 cover price, I remember going to Target and it was just a single bag comic by itself. You didn't get, it wasn't a 3-pack. And I think that's the very first time my brother and I had ever heard about G.I. Joe. So we bought the comic and just dove right into it and just loved every bit of it. The characters, the artwork, the fact that it was a big, long main story, because, of course, being a double issue, it wasn't just your standard 20-page tale. It was a longer story. And on top of that, it had all these extras, like pinups, and it had a diagram of their headquarters, the pits. It even had, like, a backup story. Had 3 of the Joes kind of stranded in the middle of the desert trying to fight off all these rebels. So it was just like the whole package, everything in it. So within either days or maybe like a week or 2 after that, we were at maybe Sears or something, and we discovered the G.I. Joe action figures. And, of course, that just blew me away. And from the comic books, oddly enough, people generally say, like, Snake Eyes is their favorite or Scarlet or something. But for whatever reason, after reading that first issue, my favorite was Breaker. And I don't know why. I can't explain why I liked that particular character so much more than the others. Maybe because he was, like, more of the oddball of the group, But, of course, when we saw the action figures, the first one I had to get was Breaker. So we got Breaker, and I think we got Stalker. And my obsession with G.I. Joe just blew up from there. And from then on, I just, for years after, was buying the toys, buying the comic books. And just, even today, I buy very few comics still on a regular basis. And one of the few comics I've been buying on a regular basis is the G.I. Joe IDW series. I've never lost that love of G.I. Joe. And I've been connected on, Facebook friends with Buzz Dixon, one of the old writers of the cartoon series, for a few years now. And, occasionally we'll comment here and there with each other, and I'll post one of my comic strips I've done or some comic book work that I'm working on. And Buzz has always been like a big supporter of anything I've done art-wise, so it's always been neat to have somebody who I, had as a hero as a kid, seeing the cartoons and seeing his name on the screen, to like, give you that kind of support as an adult, with your artwork. So that was always cool. But then what was really cool is the DFW G.I. Joe show at the Grapevine Convention Center a few years back brought in Buzz as one of their guests. So I finally got to meet him in person. And what was so awesome is here I was expecting to walk up to him and, and be the typical fanboy. And it's like, hey, do you mind if I take my picture with you and this, that, and the other? And I was going to get him to sign my G.I. Joe complete DVD set. The complete set comes in like a little green Foot Locker, and it's really cool. So I was going to have him sign that. Well, he's such an awesome guy that when I approached his table, it went in the other direction. He was like, hey, and he came around and goes, he shook my hand. He goes, fine, it's great to finally meet you. I love the art that you post and this, that, and the other. And then he asked, can I get my picture with you? I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, it's so weird, because here I was thinking I was going to fanboy out and ask him to take a picture, and it turned out the other way. So he's such a great guy. So that just, as a G.I. Joe, a longtime G.I. Joe fan, that was like the pinnacle for me to be able to have that experience with Buzz. But yeah, I think that's, for me, the first thing I think of when I think of what spawned the comics and toys, G.I. Joe is the first thing that springs to mind for me.
Now, you were picking up the small figures, the 3 1/4 or 3 3/4 or something like that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, but did the large ones come first?
Oh yeah. They were around before I was even born, so it's like I probably knew.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Well, I'm just stating facts here. Yeah, I guess they premiered, I guess maybe in the early '60s. I think. I don't know.
They were '60s. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess after that they became Action Man, and then they revived the line with G.I. Joe: Real American Hero. And as the story goes, when they were designing the toys, they said, well, we have to scale everything down. You know, we can't make them large because we were making these 12-inch figures. All their accessories were bigger. The vehicles were big. So they wanted to scale it down, and during their meeting, they were saying, well, what do we scale it down to? And I can't remember who it would have been of the designers. I can't remember his name, at least. I know he's passed away. But he held up, you know, like you would your finger and thumb, like in an L shape, you know, holding it upright. He goes, let's make it this tall. And somebody ran up with a measuring tape and measured the length, and it was 3 3/4. And so that's where the 3 3/4 inch came from, was from that meeting. So I thought that's a pretty cool thing that it spawned from. But
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but I never did get into the 12-inch figures, like I said, because of my age. I was just right at the age where the Real American Hero line hit, and so that was my thing. And the stuff that Larry Hama wrote, I mean, gosh, I refer to Larry Hama as the father of G.I. Joe, of the modern G.I. Joe, because, you know, they hired him. Of course, he was already working for Marvel, and Hasbro hired him to write the file cards that were always on the back of the packaging. So we have Larry Hama to thank for all the backstories to all the Joes that we got, you know. So, you know, he pretty much built the world of G.I. Joe, you know, himself from those file cards. And then, of course, he took that and just went crazy with the Marvel Comics series. And I got to say, I'm 2 issues shy, just 2 issues shy of having a full run of the whole 155 issue Marvel run. I'm missing issues 153 and 154. So if I could snag those at a good deal, I'm willing to pay the money. Because every time I see them, they're inflated internet prices, and I'm just not that desperate to get them at that price.
Internet inflating prices? I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
It doesn't sound like them.
Not at all.
And I saw recently that he's getting his own G.I. Joe action figure.
Yes, and I missed the Kickstarter. I was so irritated. I missed it by a day or two. It just...
Oh, wow.
With my deadline and everything that I was under the gun and just, like, working away at that full speed, and then before I realized it was all over. I turned to my deadline and realized, okay, I can relax. And I started browsing the internet. I thought, oh, crap, I missed that Kickstarter. But I don't know. I'm sure I'll be able to pick one up after the fact at some point. Because I really wanted that to go on my wall next to my George Lucas action figure that they made a few years back. So.
And I believe Larry is still writing the series that IDW's doing right now. They even continued the numbering in the Marvel line, which I thought was cool.
It was great thinking on their part. Yeah, they kicked it off with 155.5 for Free Comic Book Day. And then, of course, after that, they just went on with 156 on. And, yeah, he's still writing that series. They're on 230-something, I think. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, so, yeah. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, who wants to go next? Well, I'll go.
Okay.
I didn't have the toys, but I did pick up the comics because I thought it was kind of cool. And this was also from Marvel as well. Shogun Warriors.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a great one.
Yeah. Giant robots battling monsters. Which would be cool if Marvel had the license again, especially with them reintroducing the old-time monsters back into the main universe after Monsters Unleashed. But this was kind of a cool series. There was only how many robots were there? I know there was at least 3. Wasn't there like a 4th one, or am I?
I remember 3.
Okay.
It's been a while, because it seemed like the story was, even though in the toy line it encompassed several different types of robots from the different series from Japan, Marvel only actually had the license to do the comic on 3 of them. So I only remember 3 specific ones. But that's as good as my memory on that is at the moment.
Well, going back, and I'm looking, it was actually written by Doug Mitch.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy, and of course Herb Trimpe doing the art, which now I can remember some of the art going, that's vintage Trimpe.
Well, yeah, and of course he did G.I. Joe also, so it's like they must have had something with him in these toy line comics, I guess.
Yeah, but it was a very short-lived series, but it was kind of fun, and they actually got him into the mainstream Marvel universe, interacting with some of the heroes and all that. It's one of those you just wonder why they hadn't come back up, hadn't done something about it now. I mean, especially after like Pacific Rim, you would think that would be kind of a time that you would bring them back as a book and just try to test the waters and see if there's any kind of interest of this, starting up again. But hey, what do I know?
And like you said, maybe if the Monsters Unleashed thing takes off really well, then somebody will get the idea.
Yeah, it's possible.
I remember seeing those like on the spinner rack, and they had the best covers.
Oh, the covers were awesome. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was a good series. I only read it here and there, but I remember it was it was exactly what you wanted. Giant robots, and occasionally you would get a Marvel character thrown in there. I remember it seemed like there was one issue. Again, my memory, maybe I'm completely wrong, but it seemed like one issue they fought Doctor Doom, maybe? I want to say there was an issue with Doctor Doom, but I could be wrong.
Probably. I remember the Avengers kind of dealing with him, but in the Fantastic Four, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
Alrighty, who's next?
Alrighty, I'll jump in here. I'll take the bullet for less this time. Okay, so this is an odd topic for me because as a kid I was not really into toys that much. And by the time the toy thing got to be big, like in the 80s, I was already at the stage where my favorite toy was a library card. So I was that kid. Nobody probably listening to this is surprised at this point that I was that kid. But I've actually got a bit of a cheater answer for my first one, and I kind of had a little help with this. I might not have thought of this on my own, but I'm going to list Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Not specifically a toy, but at least a game of some sort. And it had been around obviously since the early 70s, and they had been writing books based in that kind of that world since pretty much almost since the beginning, since at least the mid 70s, and eventually managed to break some of them into comics later on, like in the night. I don't know if there might have been like a one or two limited series type things. I doubt it in the 80s, but certainly by the 90s it was getting popular enough that we were getting past the Satanic Panic from the 80s.
The Jack Chick Satanic Panic era.
Yeah, all of that goes on in the late 70s and up through like the mid to late 80s. But by the time the populace finally gets over that, you're into the 90s, and it wouldn't have taken long. It didn't take them long to start doing comics based on some of their properties, and they're still going to this day. I mean, I want to say last week, the latest D&D title, I believe it is called Frost Giants Fury.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's issue 2 came out of that. Yeah. I mean, and there's been a consistent title, or a relatively consistent D&D title coming out for like the last 2 years or so. And before that, they at least come in fits and starts. But so yeah. I've been playing D&D a long time.
I don't think that's a cheater answer at all because, I mean, it's D&D is a pastime, much like action figures or Hot Wheels or anything else. So I think that actually fits right along perfectly with the topic. It's tabletop gaming is it's definitely an escape. It's a hobby. So yeah, I think it actually fits perfectly with the topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's not specifically a toy, but
No,
then
but
again,
yeah.
it's like where the conversation went when Tom and I were talking about this was Hasbro owned it for a while. So if you want to get all legalistic about it, technically it was owned by a toy company even if it was only for a few years.
Exactly.
But anyway, yeah.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because it kind of reminds me of, I guess if you wanted to go in that direction, if you want to consider the Atari 2600 a toy, they had Atari Force, which was an awesome comic series. Atari Force was another one where I just got into. And the gateway drug was the Atari Force mini comics that came in the video games that you bought in certain video games.
Yeah, in the box, yeah.
Yeah, it was like half-size comics. So of course that led to buying the full-on DC series that was out later.
Yeah, the gateway drug. Here, little boy, you like that? Try this.
Exactly.
It'd be interesting to see if DC released Atari Force as a trade.
Dynamite's going to do that because they've got the rights to do the Atari stuff.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, because they're coming out with a Sword Quest series here, not too long from now. They're coming out with issue 0 in May, I want to say, and then issue 1 comes out in June. And they did announce, I think they announced that they're going to collect the Atari Force, which would be the first time those actually all of it be collected together.
Yeah, I've always wondered because I know for the longest time it was because of the licensing they couldn't reprint them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool that you said that that's coming out, and I hope they include the mini comics in that trade. I mean, that would be great if they could, because those were on par with the regular series. I mean, I wish I could remember who did the art and the story, but it was a DC team. There were DC creators that were making those comics, so they were putting as much heart and soul into the mini comics as they were the regular series. And what was even better about the mini comics, they were printed on, if I remember correctly, printed on glossy paper, so they looked better than what you were getting on the newsstands on newsprint. It was wild. So yeah, I mean, that'd be great if they just included everything in that trade. That would be awesome. So I'd love to reread those stories after all these years.
Okay, I'm going to toss this out there.
Go on, toss.
Masters of the Universe.
Dun, dun, dun.
He-Man.
Yeah. Was that Marvel also that pulled that in?
It was several. It started at DC and then eventually went to Marvel.
Okay. So DC bid on it first, and they've got the rights to it again now because they're still putting out stuff.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, they did not equate toys to comics. About the only toy that I had that would equate comics was paper. There was not a big crossover at that time.
Gosh.
G.I. Joe was the foot-tall figure, and there was nothing on the shelves about it as far as in the spinner rack or anything. So I know of parts of this stuff. I don't know a whole hell of a lot, but I do know that there are a multitude of toys that started and spawned once again. Comics. I had a list in front of me, and I'm shaking my head going, really? That was a toy before? But it's interesting. And He-Man was different. It was beyond the typical Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
It wasn't the wooden figures of Hanna-Barbera. This one started to flesh out a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was more into. I didn't buy a whole lot of the action figures because I was tying up all my money that I got from chores was spent on G.I. Joe and Star Wars figures. But I did have a few He-Man. I got more into the action figures than I did the cartoon or the short-lived comic series. But yeah, they were cool because they were bigger. You know, I think that was the first time. Well, no, I had the Mego dolls, and I guess they were bigger. But aside from Mego dolls, that was probably the only other figure at the time where I was getting that they were actually bigger than your standard 3 3/4 inch figures. But DC did their miniseries that they did for Masters of the Universe. I remember was really good. Now, when Marvel got the license, that's where all the fans were kind of like turning up their noses at it because it was part of the Star Comics line, and we all know how that went. Star Comics.
Yeah.
So it was very odd.
Kid friendly.
Yeah, and it was the styling of it was very watered down from the previous DC offering, and they even did a comic adaptation of the Masters of the Universe movie, which I never read or bought, the Dolph Lundgren one. But I remember my friend telling me that the artwork he bought it expecting it to be like an actual movie adaptation, and it was only an adaptation in story. Like the style, they didn't even make it try to look like the actors. He said they drew them as if they were based on the action figures, like the designs that the toy designers used for the action figures. He said it was very odd. So I never really got into that. But it's funny, Les, you brought up the 12-inch G.I. Joe series of figures. There was actually a G.I. Joe comic back in the 50s. It probably predated the 12-inch line and probably has absolutely no connection to the toy line other than it had the name G.I. Joe, and it ran through the 50s. Because I actually have an issue from that series. But again, I don't know enough about that particular series or the 12-inch. I don't think there's an actual connection between the two. But
I would have to agree with you there. I don't think there is a connection. But
yeah, I think the most you ever got with the 12-inch line of G.I. Joe was occasionally they threw in some of the sets. I guess some of the vehicle sets you would get like a little G.I. Joe mini comic. It wasn't even ash can size. It was like the size that you would get like in a box of cereal as a premium, where it was like maybe the size of a baseball card. Like they produced a few G.I. Joe comics that way. So that's probably the biggest toy to comic connection you can get out of the 12-inch line. You can see I've spent way too much time on G.I. Joe history.
Going back to Atari Force for just a quick second, the mini comics were written by Jerry Conway and Roy Thomas, with art by Ross Andrew, Gil Kane, Dick Giordano, and Mike DiCarlo. Mm-hmm. And for the regular series, it was Jerry Conway, and the art was by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. That's
right. He did the regular series. I do remember him being on it. So yeah, they had their all-stars on it. It wasn't just a throwaway.
Yeah, I mean these were some that's big names for DC at the time. I mean they're still big names now, but I mean at the time that they didn't just give it to Joe and Bill and here you go.
With apologies to Joe and Bill.
Yeah. Whoever Joe and Bill is. Not meant to be anybody in particular.
It's funny.
All right, who's next?
Is it back up to me, or
If
I
you
think
want
so.
to, or yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
If you've got another one, do you have another one? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
oh,
you don't.
yeah.
I don't know.
I do. I got several. I'm gonna go with Transformers, because this was another one that was on my radar constantly. I wasn't as much into Transformers as I was Star Wars or G.I. Joe so much, but I was definitely picking up the comics more than the toys. Probably because the toys were a lot more expensive, but I was definitely into the comics for a good while. And what was exciting about those early Transformer issues is we got issue number 3, and when I went to go get it off the spinner rack at 7-Eleven, lo and behold, there's Spider-Man on the front cover, in his black costume, and I was like blown away because I was only a Marvel baby in the sense that I was buying Star Wars, G.I. Joe, and Indiana Jones, so I wasn't into a lot of what was going on in the Marvel universe. Even though I was a big Spider-Man fan growing up, I was always into the cartoon and everything, and would occasionally buy like the Marvel team-ups because in my mind it was cool because I was getting 2 heroes for the price of 1. And but I wasn't really keeping up with Spider-Man and some of the other Marvel characters. So when I got Transformers number 3 and saw him in his black costume, I was like, why is he all in black? That was my introduction to the alien symbiote costume. So that was a big one for me, was getting Transformers 3 and having Spider-Man in there, and that was a big deal. But even bigger, not too long after that, they did the infamous G.I. Joe versus Transformers miniseries, Marvel, and that blew me away because the idea of bringing in both the Joes and Transformers all into one comic miniseries was something. It was something else. But yeah, Transformers was the comic series was always a favorite of mine. And the thing about the series, whether it was G.I. Joe or Transformers, is they always took it seriously. It never turned into a 20-page commercial for their toys. They took the storylines and the artwork very seriously, like you were saying, Thomas, with Atari Force. Like DC brought their A game with Atari Force. Marvel I felt was bringing their A game with Transformers and G.I. Joe. So, the stories in Transformers it was great stuff. To me, that was like a golden era in Marvel Comics for me early on.
I remember getting the first 4 issues of Transformers because I think I got those as part of the packs that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And so that was my introduction, and I thought that was just a limited series, so that was as far as I went. But I remember that particular issue. I remember issue 3 because I remember being the black suited Spider-Man, and I was like, well, that's kind of timely that because he hadn't had the suit that long. So yeah, that was pretty cool, and it was an interesting read. I've picked up the IDW's done a couple of collections of the old Marvel stuff, and I've picked up like the first volume, and it was kind of an interesting read. So yeah, you're right. It wasn't a 22-page advertisement for the toys. It was a legit story with character development and conflict, and just everything that you would expect from a piece of fiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
It's another one that's still got new issues coming out with IDW. So
That's true.
a couple of different titles, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two or three titles. Actually, Optimus Prime has his own solo book now. So
Right, and they had a pretty big role in the recent Revolution kind of crossover thing.
Yeah, that's right. With Rom, who is another toy to comic example.
well, Revolution was actually all the Hasbro properties. It was it's because it was not only Transformers and ROM, but it was Action Man, which is essentially the British version of G.I. Joe, and
G.I. Joe was in there.
G.I. Joe was in there. I believe the Micronauts were involved. So I mean, it was all of them. It was kind of an interesting little.
And is Mask part of that too? Is it
Yes,
Mask in there?
That was actually introducing Mask.
Yeah.
To the IDW universe.
Okay.
So, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ROM was another example of toy to comic that was really successful, and it kind of made its way into the mainstream Marvel universe. But oddly enough, I never got into it, so I can't really speak much on it. Can anybody else?
I've only picked them up in recent years. I didn't read them when they first came out. I think I had got the first issue and thought it was all interesting, but that was not one that was readily available on the stands.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually one where the comics surpassed the toy, because the toy kind of disappeared rather quickly.
Yeah.
And the comic lasted for at least 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it had a long run, and it is interesting to how it outlived the toys. You know, Micronauts kind of did the same thing, if you think about it. Micronauts was another where toys spawned a comic series, where the comic series ended up being much more successful than the toys.
Yep, exactly. Cool.
And Micronauts has also been one where it had a good revival through Devil's Due Publishing. And are they still around in some form?
Yeah, IDW just is finishing up this run right now with this month's issue.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good.
And then they're doing a mini series after that. So yeah, they're still going to keep Micronauts around.
Wow.
So, yeah, Micronauts they just brought that back within Micronauts and ROM. They just reintroduced within the last year.
Yeah, because ROM debuted on Free Comic Book Day, didn't it? Last year.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah. And Micronauts was since then. And who's the writer on Micronauts?
Three guesses.
If you're not sure, check out last week's episode.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Okay, I guess I'm next. I'm going to cheat a little bit. But it actually falls into what we've been saying so far. It was a comic book based off of a toy line. And so I'm being literal here. And it's Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars.
Oh, I wouldn't even thought of that, but that's a good example.
Because that's all the books basically came out to help promote the toys.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
And once again, this is another book that surpassed the toy line.
Yes.
I think they may have had a bit of a head start there. I mean, come on.
Well, that's true. That's true. We've kind of talked. I've brought this series up on a previous podcast, and I still would love for us to kind of discuss this series. But I'm a big fan of this, and this is really one of the grandfathers of the event books. But the toys, I think I had picked up the regular Spider-Man, and there may have been another one that I might have had. But I was really wanting to get my hands on the black suited Spider-Man, and you just could never find it.
No. Inevitably, whenever I went to any toy department, any store, all I could ever find was Doc Octopus over and over and over. It's like nobody wanted Doc Octopus.
Poor Otto.
Eventually, I got a regular Spider-Man and Wolverine, but that was the extent of my Secret Wars collection.
Yeah, I did have Wolverine too, because I remember the claws. The claws you can they were detachable. You put them on the wrist.
Yeah, it was like cosplay Wolverine.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm thinking, well, why didn't y'all follow what Kenner did with the original lightsabers and just have the thing with the little lever underneath in the bottom part of the arm, and you just throw that lever and out pops the claws. They could have done that.
That would have
maybe.
been sweet.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
That's that. Yeah, but it's cheaper to do it the way they did
Well, I know.
it.
That was Mattel, wasn't it? That was doing Super
I
Bowl?
actually, this was Kenner. No, no, you're right. Mattel. Kenner did the superpowers.
That's right. Yes, Kenner did Superpowers, and they came out about the same time.
Yeah, it was right around the same time. Yeah. So
And Superpowers, the figures, they came with mini comics, didn't they?
I think so.
So that's that kind of falls into this whole topic too. All these comics spawning toys spawning mini comic series and everything else. It's crazy.
It's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
So incestuous this industry, I tell you.
Yes.
Alrighty, who's next?
Oh, I think I'm next.
Okay.
And as tempted as I am to dogpile on your Secret Wars concept and say Star Wars, I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
Because if you want to get technical, the whole thing with Star Wars was merchandising. And
Pretty much.
so then the comics were just feeding the merchandising. But, not going there. I'm actually going to go with something a little more recent. This is actually something my kid had gotten into for a couple of years. Have you guys ever heard of Ninjago?
Yes.
See,
Definitely.
yeah, and the deal is they're these little ninja guys, and it's like this team of 5 little ninjas, and it's essentially a Lego property.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've got little Lego minis of the little different colored ninjas, and they put out basically little mini graphic novels. They weren't like traditional floppies or anything, but they were essentially little mini graphic novels of the adventures of these 5 kids going and fighting this skeletal demon guy, and just all the fun and stuff that goes with that. And I mean, this thing, since it's geared towards kids in the last 10 years or so, I mean, it's not just comics either. There are they do reader books, because this is
Yeah.
aimed towards first, second, third graders. So it's like there's children's books, and I mean almost up to chapter books. There was an animated series at one point, and I think there have been a couple of animated movies as well that are based on this stuff, and it's all based off of these little obscure little Lego guys that Lego invented, as far as I know. Not necessarily something you would find today at the local comic shop, but you can bet your butt they're selling them at the Lego store.
Oh, yeah.
If you've got one of those handy.
It's a popular property. They do the Scholastic Book Fair at the school that my wife teaches at, and yeah, Ninjago has its own section in the Scholastic Book Fairs. It's a pretty popular.
Pretty popular among a certain age group.
Yeah.
Basically,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you get the younger elementary kids, and
Oh, yeah.
they love that
definitely.
stuff. My kid was into it for a couple of years. I think he's finally kind of getting off of it now, but he's finding other things to get into. They always do.
It's interesting to sidetrack just briefly how Lego has done these spin-off properties. Lego, of course, is big now, but it wasn't too long back, I guess in the 90s, where they were hurting for better sales, and so Bionicle came along and kind of helped pump new life into the whole Lego company. With the success of Bionicle, and it sounds like Ninjago is kind of like the same thing. Not that Lego's hurting right now, but it seems like that's almost like this next generation's Bionicle, I guess.
Oh, totally.
That's
not exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Interesting.
I guess Bionicle started to die off, and so they came up with another one, and they went with ninjas this time. Because hell, who doesn't love ninjas, right?
Right.
Especially little kids especially one particular little kid who had kind of just gotten started with his karate training, and that was just cool shit for him.
Uh-huh.
That was what he was learning to do.
Of course.
I mean, obviously not like the throwing stars and all that business. They don't let the little kids play with the sai very often.
But given the chance,
Now that Alex is on the road to his black belt, they do pull out the swords every so often, which is kind of fun for him. He likes that.
That's awesome.
and then Lego has just expanded so far with the gamings and the TV and the movies.
All the licensing and then all of the spreading out into multimedia. Lego's doing it right now. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, everything is awesome.
Oh God.
Nice.
If you see the new Lego Batman movie, you get an idea of how much they do have in their repertoire, because there are figures from all sorts of Lego collections in that movie.
Oh, nice.
And I was just sat there stunned.
Oh yeah, they've got a ton of licensing stuff going on. They've got licenses with stuff it's just unbelievable how many different deals they have going.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they just do a shit ton of Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
Not that licensing with them is all that hard, but I mean, a ton of it. And then, I mean, you could just go to Toys R Us and just look at the Lego wall, and it's just amazing how much scrap there is.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Alrighty, Lester.
Wow. Where do you go? It used to be in the Toy Fair magazine. Do you guys remember this? The Toy Fair Theater?
Oh, Twisted Toy Fair Theater from Wizard.
Yeah, in Wizard, yes. I remember seeing that, but that was based on the toys before, obviously, because they posed the toys for their Fumati representation. You know, where they take pictures and then they add the script to it.
Yeah, the word balloons.
Yeah, and it was really funny stuff. And I, for one, miss it, because I thought that was well worth the price of the magazine.
Yeah.
Because in the back, either you're going to get the top ratings for Marvel, or who's the other group they were really after?
They were really in bed with Image for a long time.
Image. Yes, thank you, Image. It was just, okay, what new Image title is coming out that we can promote? But the Twisted Toy Fair, I thought, was well worth it. I thought that was fun.
Yeah. It was popular enough to where they did a hardcover collection of them at one point. I remember of all the comic stories that they created. I mean, I never got my hands on it, but it was there for people to get at one point.
And they really took some heat. They didn't get away scot-free because DC had some words for them for slighting.
Really?
Their characters, yeah. And I'm not saying, I shouldn't say slight. I should say the way that some of the DC characters were represented.
So even that would be parody, though. They couldn't really. I mean, legally, I wonder if they could even touch that because of it being a parody of the characters. But who knows?
Well, they don't necessarily have to pursue it legally. They could just talk smack on them and
true. That's true.
Discourage people from dealing with them, I guess.
Now, did that precede Robot Chicken? Seems like it did.
Yeah.
It did? Okay.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, which is funny because we were talking about Robot Chicken before the show. Yeah.
We were.
I wouldn't mind a Robot Chicken comic. That would be a little fun.
That would be.
I'm surprised they haven't done that.
They did those covers for DC years ago.
Yeah, they did the variants, but that was about it.
Yeah. But I thought that was pretty funny because they did take some shots at people.
That's funny that DC did that in years before last year, saying that they were getting mad at Wizard for doing essentially the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yes, it was a very unusual situation.
It's interesting.
I guess it's okay when it's their idea.
Well, it may be that they didn't have control of the earlier stuff.
That's true too. But the thing is about Robot Chicken makes fun of everybody. They don't particularly take sides or anything. They'll just, if the jokes are there, they'll do the jokes. So it could be DC, it could be Marvel, it could be Star Wars, it could be themselves, anything.
Oh, and they have
So,
done DC.
What was that, Mikey?
And they have done DC. They did a DC special.
Yeah.
At least one. Did they not do a second one? I thought there were.
There might have been a second one. I don't remember.
I can't remember now. But yeah, there was at least the first one, and it is pretty good, honestly.
Yeah. So, but they didn't play favorites. They would go after anybody, and I don't have a problem with that.
And DC put their name on it, so apparently neither did they.
Yep.
Now, DC filed a cease and desist order because several of their characters that ran under the title Super Friends featured Spider-Man insulting the DC heroes for their ridiculousness.
Huh.
Really?
So DC said, "Hey, wait a minute." It says here that the theater writers not so subtly poke fun at this with rare appearances of Bat Pumpkin, a Batman Mego figure with a costume recolored to orange and purple, and a pumpkin image replacing the bat symbol.
Yes.
So, I mean, they tried to get around it. But.
Okay, that makes some sense then. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, Robot Chicken never crossed the streams in terms of Marvel, and didn't really pervert. I mean, they may have done some playing with personalities, but they didn't really pervert the images at all. So.
Right. Okay.
Are we back at me, or is this just at this point? Is this just a free for all?
Either way.
I'm gonna throw this out there because this is, anybody who knows me obviously knows that this is also a big fandom for me, and that's gonna be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Because before there was a toy line, the successful toy line, before the successful cartoon, I was all about the Mirage Studios Ninja Turtles. I thought that was probably at the time, the greatest thing to happen to me as a comic reader. Greatest thing to happen to me as a comic reader since The Dark Knight Returns. I mean, when I picked up that first issue of Turtles, and granted, it was not the first printing, unfortunately, but regardless, I kind of got in on it as word started to spread throughout the fan community about this little unknown book called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So as quickly as I could find a reprint, I got my hands on one and just loved it. Just absolutely wanted that first issue, still, in my opinion, one of the best comics I've ever read. It's just it's easily in my top 5 favorite comics of all time, that first issue. And the year or two that followed after that, I guess the couple of years that followed after that, getting, the storyline with Fugitoid and the Triceratons, and, they crossed over with Cerebus, and all the one-shots that they came for each of the Turtles. I mean, just like it was just amazing, an amazing time for, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird with their pumping out, and you had Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which, I mean, I was just eating up everything they were throwing out there as far as Ninja Turtles, and so would never have guessed in those early days of reading that comic that they were going to turn it into a cartoon and toy line, because you're thinking, this is too violent, this is too dark for Saturday morning cartoon. So when I first heard about Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird talking about the toy lines, talking to these people at this company called Playmates that at the time no one had ever heard of. Now, Playmates is everywhere, but I was like, wow, they're making action figures? Like, surely not for kids. This is going to be in the direct market, right? And so I found out, no, these are going to be available. First, sure enough, they're popping up at Toys R Us. And, and then, of course, pretty much simultaneously, I started hearing rumblings of a cartoon series. I'm thinking, what? Like, okay, cartoon series? I'm thinking, is this going to be something more along the lines of Heavy Metal? The movie where it's like, geared more toward the adult crowd? Because, in my mind, I'm thinking cussing and violence and stuff, from the black and white era. So lo and behold, this cartoon comes along and it is geared toward kids. And they did it well. I think that first 5-part miniseries that kicked off the series, I was actually pretty impressed with, because there was enough of the source material still there to where a fan like me could identify with it. But it's like what came after that first 5 episodes, once they kicked off the regular series, that's where it got a lot sillier and the animation kind of got watered down a bit. So I was never as big of a fan of the cartoon series after that, but being a big Turtles fan, I would still watch it, just for the sake of watching it. But, the toy line, gosh, we all know how that just exploded. The toys, they went in every direction. You started getting Turtles dressed as Star Trek characters, Turtles as, the classic Universal monsters, Turtles as sports figures. You want to talk about a successful toy line that spawned from a comic, Turtles is up there. Is definitely up there, because that toy series went strong for years and years and years before, and it never really fizzled out, because that line fizzled out, but then they pumped it back in with the new version in 2003 with the new series, and then as that kind of went away, they pumped it back in with the new Nickelodeon series. So the toys have never gone away, much like Power Rangers, where it's like there's always been turtle figures, turtle toys to be had, if I could say that right.
Easy for you to say.
It's easy,
right. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that I would. That's a big one for me is Turtles. So I wanted to start my picks big with G.I. Joe and end with another big one for me, which would be Turtles.
Awesome.
Such a child of the 80s, jeez.
I know. and the sad thing was, I wasn't even a child anymore. I was like already getting into middle school and high school. I was in high school when the Turtles cartoon was coming out, and the only person in our high school, the only other person that I knew of in our high school that watched the Turtles cartoon was my now wife, Colleen.
Oh,
we
wow.
kind of bonded. We kind of bonded on Turtles because she was kind of a fan of the cartoon. And then I introduced her to the black and white series, which made her an even bigger fan. Of course, the movie is actually what made her a big fan of Turtles, and that kind of made her a fan of the comics and everything else.
So Turtles have to blame, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's that ooze, man. That's the secret.
Yeah. The ooze.
The ooze. Alrighty, some good choices there. This was a fun show. Eddie, I think you're about to take off. You got some things going on, but we do appreciate you joining us, hanging out with us as always.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and I look forward to listening to this episode once it hits the interwebs to listen to y'all's picks, because y'all always have really good picks on this show.
Well, thank you.
Oh, thanks, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, guys. I'm glad I got to play in y'all's playground once again. It's always a pleasure.
Good talking to you, man.
Yeah.
All right.
You're always welcome.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have said picks. We're back, and it's time for weekly picks, and this time I lead off. My first choice is from Albatross Funny Books. It is Nam Wolf, #1, written by Fabian Rangel Jr. and Logan Faerber, and I'm sure I mispronounced that, I apologize, with the art. And the premise is a guy named Marty Spencer who's serving a tour in Vietnam, and while he's over there, he suddenly discovers that he is a werewolf. So this is kind of a unique little idea that's kind of, I think it's promising. We'll see how it goes, but it's definitely original, which is always a good thing.
Sounds like it could be fun if you're into werewolves.
Yeah,
especially.
it could be a lot of fun. It could be a lot of fun. So
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
So we'll see. Mikey, you are next.
Alrighty, I'm going with a Dark Horse book first. It is called Dead Inside. This is issue 5 of 5, so this is the end of the run, the end of the arc, at least. And this is the story of, it's a cop story. It is a story about a detective who is kind of on the outs with her department, and she is assigned to investigate a death in a local prison, which she annoys her superiors by labeling it a murder, and it kind of goes into kind of the culture of the prison a little bit, and the culture of the police force, and it's been a very interesting story, and the art is also really, really cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this puppy turns out.
Yep. Sounds pretty cool. I'm a little bit behind on that one. I'll have to go back and get caught up. Be interesting to see how this one comes out. Les.
For my first choice, from Vault Comics, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the publisher that brought you Biggs.
No, Vault's the one that brought us Heathen.
And Powerless.
And Powerless.
Vault brought you Colossi.
And Colossi, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
But Vault Comics is putting out Failsafe #1, written by F.J. DeSanto and Federico Dell'Occhio, art by John Adams. This is a futuristic tale where the country had nanotech enhanced soldiers. There was a man, John Revane, who executed the last of these soldiers, thought that everything was going to be ducky. But in 10 years, there's social unrest, and the truth behind the nanotech soldiers and the government are coming forward, because sleeper agents scattered around are beginning to activate, and Revane has to make a choice between the untrustworthy government and the soldiers that he once hunted. I'm kind of looking forward to this because the possibilities are so wide. It gives you a little bit of Blade Runner feel to it with the soldiers, and then you have the backstabbing government standing there also, probably telling Revane to do what they say. And after 10 years of being away from it, I'm sure that he's a little bit cheesed about having to go back into it.
Right. Yeah, this one kind of caught my attention too. Definitely like the premise.
Yep.
And cool. Vault's been putting out some good books. I mean, it's only been around for a couple of months, but I've been impressed overall so far.
Yeah, they put out some really good stuff.
Yep. Alrighty, I am next. So my next choice is from Aftershock Comics. It is another #1, and it's called World Reader, written by Jeff Loveless and art by Wando. And it is a story about a crew who are flying from planet to planet, literally dead planets to dead planet, trying to figure out what is actually killing the universe. And the reason is Earth is the next planet on the plate. It's on the slate to be destroyed or be killed off. But she's not only is she having to deal with this, she's having to deal with problems with her crew members and having some issues with dealing with her sanity over everything. So another kind of interesting premise, and this is actually written by Jeff Loveness, who is a Jimmy Kimmel show writer, and he wrote the Groot series for Marvel. So, yeah, this is I think this might be kind of an interesting little book. Mikey.
Okay, my second pick is an Image book. I know, it's a shock. But this is Royal City. This is issue #2 coming out this week. And this is Jeff Lemire's book that he's doing all the stuff for. He's writing, he's drawing. This is totally his story. And it is the story of the family that is kind of not really like in charge, but they're very, very wrapped up in their city. It's called Royal City. And the patriarch, I'm not spoiling too much because it happens pretty early on in the first issue. The patriarch dies, or at least has a stroke. And so the kind of the siblings are required to gather around, and there's the one brother who is having to come in from out of town because he moved away, and then there's the other brother who's just kind of the family screw up, and then there's the sister who's trying to keep the family relevant in the city, and then there's the other brother who's this huge mystery. And it's the way the first issue was written, because I actually reviewed this one. It's just a really well told. The first issue itself is just a really well told story, kind of introduction to this family, and there's the fun little twist that I'm not going to spoil because you should go read this thing. And issue 2 is going to pick up. It's going to focus on the screw up brother, and so I'm really enjoying this particular series.
Yeah, Jeff Lemire. I mean, that says it all.
Says a lot, that's for sure.
Yep.
Can't go too wrong, that's for sure.
Alrighty, Les.
My second choice is Spirit Hunters #6 from Zenoscope Entertainment. Writer is Joe Brusha, art by Daniel Leister. Hopefully you've been following this limited series. This is 6 of 12, so we're halfway through the story now. But each story is kind of a standalone. You have the group that gets to travel and uncover the odd happenings, things that occurred but aren't explainable at that time. And in this one, the group, Ellen is your main character, but you've got Ellen and Michael and like 3 others that are going to a racetrack this time because of a gruesome mystery that happened there. What they find is a trail of clues and find themselves in a life and death situation. Now the question is, do they all get out, or does someone end up dying for this cause. And this is kind of, to me, it intrigues me like Hoax Hunters did. And I do miss that title. But Spirit Hunters is kind of similar. It gives you that vibe of the television program, but not necessarily everything is being filmed. So hopefully you can get back in and find back issues for it.
Cool.
Yep, you sell it well.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. We have honorable mentions, do we not?
I got another one I could throw out there real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'll keep it short.
Okay.
But yeah, Resident Alien, the most recent, the trade for the most recent series, the most recent arc, Volume 4, The Man with No Name, comes out this week. And if you have not read any Resident Alien, it's a kind of a cop story with a twist. It's actually a pretty tame cop story usually. I mean, it's not like SVU type cop story. It's like small town doctor type cop story. And of course, the main character is an actual alien from outer space. But he's kind of hiding out waiting for his ride to show up, which he's not really sure is coming. He's sort of stranded. And he kind of solves mysteries as a way to kind of keep himself busy and keep himself interested in stuff. So I'm a big fan of the series, so here's your chance to check out the last arc that we had. And the reason I'm throwing this out is because it's been a little while since the arc, so just kind of want to make everybody aware that it's here.
Right.
And I'm glad you did. It's a great read. All of the arcs are really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you could pick up this arc and not be lost. I think they're pretty self-contained. Once you know a little bit about Harry's background, it all makes sense pretty much. So
Right.
This is as good a jumping on point as any.
Okay. It's a good choice. I have one as well. I figured we need to mention this one. This is from Dynamite Entertainment. Written by Bill Willingham from Fables fame, and Caesar Razik doing the art. It's the Greatest Adventure #1, and this is more or less a team up of all the characters from the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe. So you're talking Tarzan, John Carter, and all the others. So what?
I couldn't list very many more than that myself, but yeah, it's...
So, and it's funny that I'm sure that's been done to a limited extent before, but, it's Bill Willingham, so this has the potential of being a very interesting little series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I've said this before, Dynamite's been doing pretty well with these crossover things, so
Yep.
it is generally worth checking out.
All right. Anything else? Any special shout-outs this week?
Just a quick thanks to Eddie for hanging out with us.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Medina. It's fun as always. And we'll have you on again real soon. So, alrighty, then our usual suspects. First off, shout out to Manny the Murderer for the cool music that we have for our podcast. Thank you, guys. Really great group of guys, awesome musicians. If you check our show notes, we'll have a link to their page, or if you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our podcast page, there will be a link there to check out some of their music. So thank you guys very, very much. Shout out to Potter and Family on Twitter. Hashtag Potter and Family. If you're looking for a podcast Just, it doesn't matter what it is. Just any kind of subject that you are looking for. Go to Twitter. You don't necessarily have to have an account. And just use search. Hashtag Podern Family. That is the community of podcasters that retweet other podcasters' links to their shows. And they've been so gracious to spread the word of the fellowship, and we've been doing our darndest to return the love in kind. So thank you guys. Y'all are awesome. We appreciate the support, as always. And finally, you dear listeners, thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening to this episode and our previous episodes. As always, we appreciate your feedback. You got a comment, question, complaint, anything, just let us know, and we'll be happy to respond. There are several ways you can contact us. You can go to our website. Once again, that's www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Click on our About Us tab, and there's a form you can fill out there. Or you can simply just shoot us an email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Or you can contact us through social media. Please follow us on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks, as one word. Like us, and you want to shoot us a message that way, that would be awesome. We're obviously on Twitter, at Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to like us. You want to shoot us a message that way, or just say, hey, like the show, think y'all are doing great, or whatever. Just let us know. Mikey has his own Twitter account, at Mikey Geek, and I have one as well, at TomTCGeek. Please feel free to follow us and say hi if you'd like. That would be awesome. Mm-hmm. And wherever you download our podcasts, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or if you just listen to us on YouTube, feel free to rate us, whether it's the numbers or thumbs up, thumbs down, or stars or whatever. Please do that. That would be much appreciated. And if you have a couple extra minutes, a review would be awesome as well. I missed anything?
I don't think so. I think you got it.
Question of the week?
Are there any toys and or comics that we didn't mention that you enjoyed as a kid or would just like to throw at us?
Okay.
Holler at us.
That'll work.
Let us know. Tell us about it.
That will work. That's awesome. Any final thoughts?
That would have implied that we had beginning thoughts.
Well,
but you know,
I was trying to be nice, but okay.
No, just the usual. Thanks, everybody.
Same here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening once again, guys. It's much appreciated. We love you. Till next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,